6 months after Mia and Jesse vanished during their cross-country trip, their camera, long presumed lost, suddenly synced to the cloud. One photo, no message. But everything changed. It happened at exactly 3:17 a.m. Mia's sister, Amber, was half asleep when her phone buzzed. At first, she thought it was one of the many news alerts she'd silenced months ago. But this notification didn't come from an app. It came from a cloud account no one had touched since the day Mia disappeared. New photo uploaded to Mia's camera. Amber stared at the screen, her breath catching. That couldn't be right. The camera vanished with them. Locked in the van, they were last seen driving through the Colorado Rockies. There had been no signal from it since. No GPS, no metadata, no updates. Just like Mia and Jesse, total silence. Amber fumbled with her login, fingers trembling. She hadn't opened this shared folder in months. It used to be a place filled with joy, a digital scrapbook of their road trip, sunsets over canyons, Jesse's goofy selfies, Mia's artsy shots of rustic gas stations and dusty diners. They were supposed to document everything. One photo a day, Mia had said. That's the deal. But the upload stopped 6 months ago, right after their last known location, a stretch of highway near Black Bear Pass. Since then, nothing. No answers, no sightings, no van, no bodies. Just theories. And now, one photo. Amber opened the file. The screen turned black for a split second as the image loaded. Then it appeared. A wide-angle shot. Dim, fuzzy around the edges. A rocky wall. Cold-looking stone. A small puddle in the foreground, reflecting what looked like a dim light source, maybe a flashlight or camera flash. And in the center of the frame, Mia, standing. Alone. She wasn't smiling. She wasn't posing. She wasn't even looking directly at the camera. Her expression was unreadable. Her face half-lit, half-shrouded in darkness. Eyes wide, lips parted. Behind her, barely visible, was something else. A shape. A shadow. A figure. It was impossible to tell, but it was there. Amber's stomach turned. She zoomed in. Pixelation blurred the image, but something about Mia's posture was off. As if she were standing too still. As if this photo wasn't taken with her knowledge. Like she had been placed there. And then Amber noticed the timestamp. Yesterday. The photo had been taken yesterday. 6 months after the official search was called off. After the tearful vigils and cold case classification. After the experts in drones and dogs. And this photo had just appeared, without explanation. She called the police. By 5 a.m., detectives were inside her apartment, examining the cloud server, trying to trace the IP address of the upload. Nothing made sense. Mia's camera had been logged off for 6 months. No signal, no network. How could it suddenly come back online? Theories spread like wildfire. News outlets grabbed the headline. Missing couple's camera comes back online, with eerie new photo. People began asking the obvious questions. Was Mia still alive? Was someone playing a cruel game? Was this a cry for help? Or something worse? And beneath the rising panic, Amber clung to a single fragile thought. If this photo was real, then maybe Mia wasn't gone. Not yet. And if there was one photo, maybe there could be more. Before they vanished, before the headlines and the search teams, Mia and Jesse were just two people in love with the road, the sky, and each other. Mia Wallace was 28, freelance graphic designer, a little introverted, but the kind of person who remembered your dog's name, even if she met you once. She loved photography, not selfies, but the kind of shots that made silence feel cinematic. Abandoned diners, empty gas stations, neon signs flickering against desert skies. Jesse Rowe was 30, former high school science teacher who'd left the classroom to write a travel blog. Tall, talkative, slightly messy, with a love for national parks and a well-worn copy of Into the Wild in his backpack. He had a way of making strangers feel like old friends, the guy who'd strike up a conversation at a rest stop and leave with life advice from a trucker. They met 3 years earlier at a vintage film screening of Easy Rider in Portland, Maine. Both had come alone. Both had ordered the same popcorn with extra butter. Jesse had cracked a joke about Mia stealing his seat. She had told him to try and stop her. By the end of the movie, he'd asked if she liked road trips. She'd answered, "I live for them." They moved in together 6 months later. The cross-country trip wasn't an escape. It was a celebration. Their before-we-have-kids journey a promise to each other to see the country while it still felt big and wild and full of stories. Maine to Oregon, back roads only. No interstates unless absolutely necessary. Campgrounds, local diners, strangers' stories over campfires. No strict schedule, just a map with pins and dreams. They bought a used Sprinter van and converted it with their own hands. Painted it teal and named it Luna. Inside was a mini kitchenette, a fold-down bed, shelves stacked with paperback novels, instant coffee, and a GoPro mounted to the dash. Their plan was to document the whole journey. Not for fame, but for memory. The blog was Jesse's idea. Mile by mile, he called it. Each post was a blend of photos, thoughts, and little discoveries. A forgotten mining town in Pennsylvania, a waitress in Ohio who claimed she'd met Elvis, an antique store in Kansas that sold nothing but dolls. Their online following grew slowly, people drawn to their honesty, their joy, the quiet poetry of two people looking for wonder. They weren't reckless. They checked in with family. Used GPS, kept emergency supplies. Mia always carried bear spray, even when it felt silly. They weren't running from anything. They had good jobs waiting when they got back. Jesse had an offer to teach again. Mia was lining up design work with a big client. Their families loved them. They had friends, game nights, holiday dinners. They had a future. And in every picture they posted, from foggy mountain trails to sun-drenched desert highways, you could feel it, the rhythm of something rare, the quiet, steady pulse of two people who trusted the road and each other. Then came that last post. A video, filmed by Mia, as they stood beside their van at the edge of a winding cliffside road in Colorado. Jesse turns to the camera, grinning. Black Bear Pass, he says. We made it. Kinda crazy up here. Wish us luck on the way down. Mia laughs behind the lens. If we don't post in 2 days, send a helicopter. She was joking. They both were. But 2 days later, they were gone. They weren't just traveling. They were curating a mosaic of memories. Each photo, each post, a breadcrumb on a path that no one thought would abruptly end. The story of Mia and Jesse's road trip wasn't just lived. It was shared. Not in a flashy, influencer kind of way, but in that raw, genuine tone that made thousands of people quietly root for them. Their Instagram account, @MileBimalaJournal, was a digital scrapbook, 2 silhouettes against Monument Valley's orange haze. A shot of Jesse pretending to lasso a tumbleweed in Texas. Mia's feet hanging over the edge of a canyon, painted toenails catching the sunset. Every image had a caption, sometimes poetic, sometimes funny. Camped under a billion stars last night. Pretty sure we heard a bear, or Jesse snoring. TBD. Montana is basically a Bob Ross painting that came to life. Met a couple who've been on the road for 30 years. They gave us homemade beef jerky and directions to nowhere. Perfect. Their blog gained modest traction. People left comments like, I check your posts every morning with my coffee. You make me want to quit my job and hit the road. This is the love story I needed today. They weren't trying to go viral. They were just documenting joy. And that made people trust them. Mia's photos had a softness to them, a patient eye. Jesse's videos captured laughter, the clink of enamel mugs, the rhythm of tires on gravel. There was something unfiltered about the way they moved through America, as if they were walking through someone else's dream. They didn't rush. They took side roads just because a gas station sign looked interesting. They detoured for pie, for thunderstorms, for stories. They camped by lakes, showered in rivers, made pancakes on a portable stove. Their last 3 blog entries were short but cheerful. Day 42. Utah's Mars-like rocks and friendly lizards. Day 44. A sleepy night in Telluride. Might move here. Day 45. Onward to the pass. The adventure gets steeper. And then came the final video. It wasn't anything special, at least not at first glance. Just Mia and Jesse standing beside Luna, their teal van, parked on the gravel shoulder of a narrow mountain road. Wind whipping at Mia's hair. Jesse with a hoodie pulled over his ears. The sky behind them looked heavy with storm clouds, the peaks sharp and silent in the background. Mia held the camera. You could hear her shivering a little. Jesse waved. We made it. Black Bear Pass. One of the craziest drives in the country. We're technically not supposed to be up here this early in the season, but hey, when has that stopped us? She turned the camera toward herself. Her cheeks were red from the cold, but her smile was warm, confident, excited. Asterisk. Next stop, she said, Black Bear Pass. Wish us luck. Then the screen cut to black. That was it. The post went live at 2:03 p.m. It would be the last time anyone saw or heard from them again. At first, no one panicked. They were travelers. After all, off the grid was part of the charm. But as the hours turned into days, and days into a week, the silence became deafening. The day after Mia and Jesse posted that final video, their absence was almost expected. They were in the mountains. Black Bear Pass was notorious for bad reception, hairpin turns, and weather that could flip in an instant. Friends and followers waited patiently, assuming the next post would come with a wild story. Maybe a joke about getting stuck behind a herd of goats or nearly tipping the van on a curve. But nothing came. No new photo. No check-in. No call to Amber. And that was odd. Mia called her sister every couple of days. Even if it was just a quick, "We're alive, love you, back soon." That routine, that reliability, had been Mia's way of staying grounded. And now, radio silence. Amber tried not to worry. She told herself it was the wilderness, that maybe their phones had died or they were waiting out a storm. She messaged them on Instagram, left a voicemail, then 2 more, then 5. By day 3, worry began to whisper. By day 5, it was shouting. Amber contacted a few of Mia's closest friends. No one had heard a word. Jesse's parents hadn't either. It wasn't just Mia. Jesse, who always uploaded blog posts on schedule, was equally silent. The inbox of milebymilejournal@gmail.com sat unanswered. On the 6th day, Amber drove to their apartment in Portland. The landlord let her in. Everything was untouched. Bills neatly stacked. Plants watered. By a friend, scheduled while they were gone. Nothing to suggest they had planned to vanish. No signs of stress. No messages left behind. By the 7th day, Amber filed a missing persons report. The authorities responded with a shrug at first. Young adults go off-grid all the time. But Amber was persistent. She printed out their travel route, pinned photos on a map, highlighted dates, locations, sightings. She showed the final Instagram post, the video, the caption. Next stop, Black Bear Pass. Wish us luck. That got their attention. Because Black Bear Pass wasn't just scenic, it was dangerous. Narrow switchbacks. No guardrails. Not recommended for standard vehicles. It had been closed for part of the season due to landslides, and most travelers avoided it in early spring. Search and rescue was deployed within 48 hours. Helicopters scanned the trail. Rangers combed the area. They found tire tracks, brief impressions in the gravel that matched their van's tires. But they ended near a steep overlook and went no further. No van. No bodies. No debris. It was as if Mia and Jesse had simply evaporated. Their disappearance made local news. Then regional. Then national. Young couple vanishes during road trip. Last seen near infamous mountain pass. Comments poured in online. Armchair detectives dissected the video frame by frame. Reddit threads erupted with theories. They crashed and weren't found. They faked it and ran off. They were victims of something darker. But for Amber, it wasn't about theories. It was about her sister. About answers. She kept calling. Every day. Sometimes twice. Her voice would break. Sometimes mid-message. Mia, if you hear this, please just send something. Anything. But the line stayed cold. No ping. No GPS signal. Just silence. 2 weeks in, hope clings to the edges of every lead. But the mountains are vast, and silence has a way of swallowing footprints. 14 days after the last video, a search team stumbles on something. Not much, but enough to jolt everyone back into motion. Deep in the San Juan Mountains, down an unmarked path near Black Bear Pass, they find what looks like a forgotten campsite. It's rough, tucked into a tree line, barely noticeable from the air. No fire recently burned, but the ash ring is fresh. Still blackened, still smelling faintly of smoke. Near the fire pit, 2 worn t-shirts, one with a faded design of a dinosaur riding a bicycle, just like the one Jesse wore in several photos. The other is a plain blue tank top, Mia's size. Scattered pine needles. A crushed instant coffee packet. An empty water bottle, cracked from the cold. But no van. No Luna. No footprints leading away. No tire tracks coming in. Worse, no phones. Searchers scan the area with dogs, drones, and thermal gear, but the terrain is brutal. Cliffside drops, sudden snow, sharp rocks camouflaging danger. Any wrong turn here could be final. But there are no bodies, no broken glass, no sign of struggle, no blood, just stillness. The lead detective, Sheriff Lauren Bradley, stands with Amber at the site. His voice is quiet. This could be them. But it doesn't tell us anything. Not yet. Amber snaps a photo of the campsite on her phone. Later, she'll zoom in over and over, looking for something, anything, that might explain what happened. A shadow, a symbol, a clue. The media dubs it the vanishing camp. News stations send reporters. A few even film in the same spot, dramatizing it. But as the story fades from the front page, so does the manpower. The official search effort slows. Volunteers thin out. The online communities go quiet or descend into conspiracy. Mia and Jesse become headlines from last month. The world moves on, but their parents can't. Mia's mother, Denise, stops answering the phone. She keeps Mia's childhood room untouched. Clothes folded, books stacked, the old stuffed rabbit on the pillow. Jesse's father, Michael, drives cross-country to Colorado and walks the trails himself. He starts a Facebook group, Find Mia and Jesse. Posts daily. Shares old photos. Keeps their memory alive like a flame, refusing to die. Amber stops sleeping. She joins forums. Contacts psychics, trackers, anyone who might know something. Her posts become shorter, more desperate. Please, has anyone seen a teal Sprinter van? Oregon plates. Anywhere. But there's nothing. No bank activity. No phone pings. No social media updates. Luna, the van they built with love, might as well have driven off the edge of the earth. They hit a wall. No evidence. No witnesses. No trail. Only a frozen forest. 2 shirts. And a family quietly breaking apart under the weight of unanswered questions. Then months pass. And just when everyone is nearly given up, when the grief settles like dust, and the world stops checking the news feeds, a single image appears in the cloud. Grief is cruel, but final. It allows for mourning, for closure. But mystery? It festers. It waits. And sometimes, it returns when you least expect it, like a breath against the back of your neck. Exactly 6 months to the day since Mia and Jesse vanished, Amber's phone buzzed. She was at work, sorting through invoices at her desk, half listening to a coworker talk about weekend plans. Then came the familiar chime. Soft, almost forgettable. Google Photos. One new photo uploaded from Mia's camera. Amber froze. Her hands trembled as she unlocked the screen. She hadn't touched that shared album in months. It had sat untouched, like a sealed room in a house you're afraid to enter. But there it was. Uploaded at 3:17 a.m. No caption. No location data. Just one photo. And what it showed would haunt her for the rest of her life. Mia, standing alone in the dark. The flash had illuminated a rough stone wall behind her, like the inside of a cave or an old mine shaft. Her face was partially overexposed, pale and lifeless in the sudden burst of light. Her eyes were open, staring straight into the camera, but they looked vacant, hollow, like the soul behind them had been scraped out. She wasn't crying. She wasn't screaming. She looked resigned, almost like a statue. Her hair was damp, hanging in clumps around her face. She wore the same blue tank top from the abandoned camp. Dirt smudged her collarbone. A single scrape marred her cheek. But it wasn't her that made Amber drop the phone. It was what stood behind her. In the far right corner of the frame, nearly swallowed by the darkness, was a shape. At first glance, it looked like a shadow. But the longer Amber stared, the clearer it became. The silhouette of a figure, tall and narrow, draped in what looked like a dark hooded cloak or jacket. No face visible. No detail. Just the outline of something, or someone, watching Mia from behind. Motionless. Too close. Amber's breath caught in her throat. Her instinct was to scream, but no sound came. She backed up the photo. Checked the metadata. Nothing had changed. No new GPS. No time discrepancy. Just that one awful image, pushed into the cloud by a camera no one had touched since their disappearance. And that's when the dread sank in. The camera was missing. It had never been found at the campsite. Search and rescue had combed every inch of terrain near Black Bear Pass. Nothing. So how had it turned back on? How had it connected to Wi-Fi? Where had this photo been taken? Who had taken it? Amber forwarded it to the police. Called Sheriff Bradley at home. His voice on the other end was quiet, but strained. "We'll reopen the file," he said. "This changes everything." The image was examined by analysts. Enhanced. Pixel-picked. The figure in the background didn't match Jesse's build. It wasn't him. Online forums exploded. Reddit caught fire. People compared the photo to horror films, cult rituals, true crime disappearances. Some said it was a hoax. Some said it was staged. But no one could explain how the camera, 6 months missing, had found a signal and uploaded a single frame to the cloud. Amber knew one thing for sure. Mia had been alive when the photo was taken. One photo. No timestamp. No location. But a clue stronger than any before. It was recent. Which meant someone was still out there. The moment Amber handed over the image, the case was no longer cold. Sheriff Bradley, who'd quietly kept the folder marked MIA and Jesse at the front of his desk drawer, now opened it with urgency. The photo wasn't just eerie. It was actionable. Digital forensic analysts were brought in. The first thing they confirmed was both shocking and undeniable. The photo hadn't been taken 6 months ago. Metadata was scrambled, likely corrupted or wiped by whatever device had handled the upload. But subtle clues told another story, details the eye might miss. The version of the Google Photos watermark on the bottom corner was from a recent update, released only 3 weeks ago. The flash pattern didn't match Mia's old model. It was processed through an editing app that hadn't even existed at the time of their disappearance. Someone had either uploaded it from a newer device or altered it. In either case, it hadn't sat untouched for half a year. It was recent, fresh, and terrifying. This meant 2 possibilities. 1, the camera was in someone else's hands. 2, Mia was still alive when it was taken. Sheriff Bradley didn't waste time. He reopened the case formally. A new task force was assembled. Fresh eyes, digital experts, wilderness trackers, even outside consultants. The campsite was revisited. This time, the search was wider, deeper into the mountains' jagged paths and forgotten trails. Drones with thermal imaging scanned the region again. A special unit followed hidden mines and defunct cabins mapped from a century-old prospector's journal. But the wild still gave nothing back. Geolocation tracking on the cloud account failed. Whoever uploaded the photo had disabled GPS metadata before syncing, either by accident or deliberately. But now the investigation had a pulse, and the photo hit the media like wildfire. National news ran the headline. Mia seen alive? Chilling photo suggests vanished couple's case isn't over. Experts weighed in on the expression on Mia's face. Trauma specialists said she looked dissociated, fearful. One criminologist suggested it resembled hostages shown in proof-of-life photos. Another theory emerged. Was this a message? A signal? The dark figure in the background became the internet's obsession. Dozens of theories took root. Everything from cults to backwoods hermits to human traffickers. The grainy outline was analyzed endlessly. But police zeroed in on one question. If Mia was alive, where was Jesse? And if someone had the camera, why upload that photo now? Amber stopped sleeping again. Every night she sat with her laptop, watching the cloud account, checking her inbox, staring at that terrible photo like it might blink. She made herself study Mia's eyes. She wasn't just standing there. She was being watched. Sheriff Bradley met privately with both families. His message was quiet but clear. We believe someone is alive, and we're not giving up this time. Sometimes, it's not what's in the center of a photo that matters most. It's what hides in the corners, half-lit, easily missed. The devil isn't just in the details. So is the way out. Amber had stared at the photo so many times, she could trace the contours of Mia's face with her eyes closed. But on the 49th viewing, sometime after 2 a.m., coffee in hand and hope long gone, she noticed something she hadn't before. To the left of Mia's shoulder, just above her head, the stone wall behind her wasn't smooth. It was marked, scarred. She zoomed in. There, faint but distinct, was a carved cross, hand-scratched, uneven old. Below it, barely visible under the overexposed light, were lines. Angled. Intentional. She pulled the image into a photo editor and adjusted the contrast. The faint lines sharpened. Not cracks. Not natural rock. They looked like part of a map. Like someone had etched directions. Amber's heart began to race. She posted a side-by-side comparison on Reddit under a throwaway account. Caption it simply, "Does this look familiar to anyone?" Found on a missing person's photo. Within an hour, the post exploded. Hundreds of theories poured in, most wild and useless. But one reply stopped her cold. "That looks like the entry wall of the old Rose Creek Tunnel. San Miguel County, CO, abandoned mining shaft. Locals call it the Hollows. Cross symbols common there. Miners used to carve them for protection." The user, a hobby spelunker named Mark47, posted a blurry photo from a trip he'd taken 2 years earlier. Same stone texture, same cross, same crude map work. Amber's throat tightened. She forwarded everything to Sheriff Bradley. The moment he saw it, he called in the search team. San Miguel County. Remote. Dangerous terrain. Overgrown paths and vertical drops. The Rose Creek Tunnel hadn't been used in decades, shut down after a collapse in the late 80s. But if Mia had been photographed inside, or someone wanted them to think she had, it became the new center of the investigation. Theories boiled. Had Mia and Jesse taken shelter there during the storm that hit the night after their last post? Or had someone lured them there? Bradley coordinated with local rangers. A small group geared up for entry. The tunnel had to be accessed through a narrow, crumbling slope, dangerous, but not impassable. The next morning, as fog clung low to the ground, they descended toward the hollows. Inside, they found old signs of life, a torn backpack, a faded note, unreadable, cans of food expired 10 years ago, and deep in the stone, just as Amber's photo had suggested, the cross. The map, carved by hand. Below it, newer etching, a date. 2 weeks ago, the same day the photo uploaded. The wind howled low through the gulch as the search team reached the mouth of the Rose Creek Tunnel, now mostly buried under decades of rock slides and debris. What had once been an open entry into a mining shaft was now a jagged, half-collapsed gap in the mountainside, hidden behind brush and silence. It wasn't on any modern map. No trail signs led there. Without that carved photo clue, it would have remained forgotten, like the people who once dug beneath it. Sheriff Bradley led the team, flanked by a forest ranger and 2 train climbers. Behind them, Amber waited at the temporary camp, fingers laced tight, watching the tree lean as if it might breathe. It took an hour to clear the rocks blocking the entrance, just enough for one person to crawl through at a time. The air inside was stale and cold, the walls slick with moisture. Their flashlights painted thin beams over the darkness, catching glints of old rail tracks and splinters of rotted wood. Farther in, graffiti from the 70s bled across the stone, names and dates in faded spray paint. Then, the first sign, a smear of something across the wall, low to the ground. Not blood, dirt, or maybe charcoal. Written in frantic, uneven lines. No way out. Too late. The team pushed deeper. About 50 yards in, a rusted mine cart sat overturned. Behind it, wedged between 2 stones, was a crumpled, empty can of beans. Faded and weathered, but written on its side in shaky Sharpie. "Help US." Sheriff Bradley knelt, heart thudding in his chest. It wasn't old. No rust inside. No mold. It had been opened recently. They weren't just retracing history. They were following someone. And then, the second sign, tucked into the corner of a dry alcove, partially buried beneath a torn thermal blanket, a backpack. Dusty, worn, and unmistakable. A patch on the strap. National Parks Forever. Inside they found a cracked phone, battery dead. A spiral-bound notebook, most pages torn out. A driver's license, slightly bent but readable. Jesse McConnell. The air grew colder. Whoever had been here wasn't a stranger. Jesse had made it this far. Whether he was still alive, or had left the backpack behind while trying to find help, was anyone's guess. But this wasn't an accident anymore. Not a couple who got lost on a joyride. This was something else. The tunnel curved sharply to the right, disappearing into deeper black. Beyond it, the team found newer footprints in the dust. 2 sets. One heavier, broader. One smaller, barefoot. The tunnel hadn't just been visited recently. It was occupied. No scream. No sound. Just a whisper of movement in the dark. And then, a face they never thought they'd see again. The further they moved into the tunnel, the quieter the air became, as if even sound itself hesitated to follow them. Sheriff Bradley raised a hand. Everyone stopped. There, just ahead, past a narrow split in the rock, something moved. A flicker. A shift of shadow. The team edged forward, weapons lowered but ready, flashlights aimed. They turned the corner slowly, and froze. She was sitting against the wall, knees pulled to her chest, arms wrapped tight, eyes closed. Dirt clung to her skin. Her lips were cracked, hair matted. A bruise stretched from her temple and her hairline. But there was no mistaking her. Mia. Alive. Barely. She didn't react when the light hit her face. Not at first. Then her eyes fluttered, slowly, as if waking from a dream too deep to leave. Her lips parted, but no words came. Sheriff Bradley knelt beside her, his voice trembling despite years on the force. Mia. Mia McConnell. A small nod. Barely there. Tears pricked his eyes. She was wrapped in a thermal blanket, given sips of water, her pulse checked. Her breathing was shallow but steady. One of the medics whispered, "She's severely dehydrated. Probably concussed. We need to airlift her out fast." Mia blinked slowly. Her gaze wandered over them, like she wasn't sure they were real. But then, her hand shot out, grabbing Amber's picture, still clipped to Bradley's vest. She stared at it. Her own face. The photo that had brought them here. A tear rolled down her cheek. But when someone gently asked, "Where's Jessie?" she flinched. Her entire body recoiled, a soft moan escaping her throat. "Mia." Bradley tried again. "Do you know where Jessie is?" No answer. Only a quiet, terrified shaking of her head. She wasn't just dehydrated. She was traumatized. Too far gone for full senses. But something in her eyes said more than words ever could. Jessie hadn't made it out. Or if he had, something had gone terribly wrong. The rescue was swift. A chopper was called in. Mia was carefully lifted out on a stretcher, her fingers still clutching the corner of the photo. Amber rode with her, holding her hand, whispering, "You're okay now. You're safe." But as the helicopter lifted off, Sheriff Bradley remained behind in the tunnel, staring into the darkness beyond the split rock. Something was still in there, and he couldn't shake the feeling. Mia hadn't been alone. The hospital room was quiet except for the steady rhythm of the heart monitor. Mia lay still beneath the thin white blanket, her eyes fixed on a crack in the ceiling. She hadn't spoken since they'd pulled her from the tunnel. Amber sat beside her, hand resting lightly over Mia's. She didn't push, didn't ask, just waited. On the third day, Mia whispered, "Rain." Amber leaned in. "What, sweetie?" There was rain. That night. Thunder. We were driving near the ridge. Jessie saw someone on the shoulder, waving. Her voice was hoarse, fragile, like it had to travel from far away. The sheriff had come in silently, notepad in hand, letting her speak on her own time. He said his truck broke down. Hood was up. We asked if he needed a phone. He said his was dead. Then he looked up at the sky and said a storm was coming, that there was a mine nearby, an old shelter miners used in bad weather. Sounded crazy, but she swallowed. We were on a dirt road. No signal. Storm was real. Jessie said it might be fun, like camping. The man said he had lanterns inside. Dry blankets. We followed him on foot. Not far. 10 minutes. Her eyes shifted to the wall. When we got inside, he lit something. A flare maybe. Said he'd go check the back for supplies. Then we heard something, like metal scraping. Jessie went after him. I stayed near the entrance. Her fingers gripped the blanket. Then a sound behind me. Like footsteps. Then everything went black. She closed her eyes. One tear slipped down. When I woke up, it was cold. My head hurt. Jessie was gone. Just gone. And the entrance was blocked. Rocks. Metal bars. I screamed. For hours. Days, maybe. The sheriff cleared his throat gently. "Did you ever see him again?" A long silence. Then Mia shook her head. Slowly. Like each motion weighed her down. "No. But I heard someone. Not always. Just sometimes. Breathing. Scraping." He never spoke. Just watched. She shivered. Then one day, a camera was left in front of me. Our camera. Fully charged. I didn't know how. There was a note under it. Bradley leaned forward. What did it say? Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Look alive." Amber covered her mouth. Mia blinked, her face pale. I didn't take that photo. He did. Mia's fragmented memories were enough to build from. She couldn't recall a name. But she remembered the way the man walked, slow, with a limp, a deep voice like gravel, long gray beard, an old green jacket with a patch that said Ranger. A police sketch artist worked with her, bit by bit. The resulting composite was haunting, familiar, even to Sheriff Bradley, because it resembled someone they crossed paths with once years ago. A name surfaced, Reuben Callister, a former forest ranger who had vanished from the records 2 decades earlier after being discharged from service. On paper, it said medical leave. Digging deeper, they found the truth: psychotic episodes, isolationist behavior, and a violent incident involving a camper. He'd never stood trial. Charges were dropped. He disappeared into the mountains of San Miguel County. Harmless, they said. Just a broken man who wanted to be left alone. But now they weren't so sure. Following old reports and recent satellite scans, searchers narrowed in on an isolated clearing near the base of Coldwater Ridge, about 4 miles from the mine entrance. They found a cabin there, hidden beneath years of moss, branches, and camouflage netting. It was practically invisible to anyone not looking for it. What they discovered inside turned the search from mysterious to monstrous. The cabin was filled with notebooks, dozens, each filled with erratic, obsessive writing, sketches of people, trails, symbols carved into the margins. And in one of the newer books, drawings of Mia and Jesse, page after page. Mia's face, eyes closed. Jesse, hands tied. Scenes too vivid to be imagined. Tacked to the back wall were printed photos. Photos no one else had ever seen. Jesse laughing by a waterfall. Mia sleeping in a hammock. Them, holding hand by their van. And then, darker ones. Mia sitting against a stone wall. Jesse looking injured. Afraid. There, on a dusty shelf, was their camera. The same one that had synced one image to the cloud. It wasn't a glitch. It was a message. Intentional. Sheriff Bradley held it in his hands, jaw tight. He wanted us to see it. But Reuben Callister was nowhere to be found. The cabin was abandoned. Recent footprints led into the woods, but stopped at a creek, washed away by last week's rain. It was a tech analyst, combing through the devices seized from the cabin, who found it. A dented laptop, tucked under a pile of blankets and broken radios. The hard drive was corrupted, but recoverable. Among hundreds of strange, disconnected video files, blurry trails, animal traps, whispered ramblings, was one folder, labeled simply J. Inside were 3 videos. The first was just static. The second showed a tunnel wall. The third made the entire room fall silent. Jesse. His face appeared in the dim glow of a flickering flashlight. He looked thinner, pale. Dirt smudged his cheeks, and his left arm was wrapped in what looked like a torn flannel shirt. He winced with every breath, but kept the camera steady. His voice shook as he spoke. My name is Jesse Linwood. If you're watching this, that means someone found the bastard shack. Or maybe Mia made it out. He coughed, a wet, painful sound, but pushed on. We were trapped. The walls gave in behind us. I think he planned it. Sealed us in. But Mia, she's alive. I kept her in the main chamber, where there was more air. I tried to dig through. He turned the camera toward a jagged hole in the rock. Crude tools lay scattered. A bent shovel, a pipe, even a broken car jack. I've been digging for, I don't know, days, weeks. Food ran out. Water too. My leg's broken, maybe worse. If someone finds this, tell me he has something for me. The camera stilled on his face again. I never gave up. Not on her. Not once. I didn't die afraid. I died fighting. He gave a small, heartbreaking smile. And I loved her. From the start. All the way to the end. The screen went dark. Mia watched the video in the hospital with her hand pressed over her mouth, tears streaming in silence. She didn't sob. She didn't scream. She just closed her eyes and whispered. I knew he tried. I knew. A week later, following the clues in Jesse's video, a recovery team returned to the mine. Behind a collapsed section of tunnel, they found him. His body was slumped near the wall, hands still outstretched toward a gap in the rocks, only a few more inches from breaking through. In front of him was a small pile of stones, arranged into a heart. He had died just feet from reaching her, but he hadn't failed, because she had lived. Mia's body healed slower than anyone hoped, but faster than doctors expected. Her mind, though, was a battlefield. In the hospital, She flinched at shadows, refused to be in the dark, slept with the lights on. Sometimes, she'd wake up screaming Jesse's name. Other times, she'd whisper it like a prayer. Amber never left her side. She sat through Mia's silences, her breakdowns, her nightmares. She dealt with the media when Mia couldn't, fielded the questions, denied the interview requests, deleted the cruel online theories. But eventually, Mia began to speak. Not to reporters, not to detectives, to a therapist. The process was slow, agonizing. Some sessions ended in screams, others in silence. But piece by piece, Mia rebuilt something inside herself. Not the life she had before, but something new, something stronger. Then came the decision that surprised everyone, especially Amber. Mia agreed to share her story. Not for fame, not for money, but for Jesse. "I won't let him be remembered as a victim," she told a producer. "He was a hero, and someone out there, someone else trapped or silenced, might need to hear that survival is possible." She signed onto a documentary called The Tunnel. Mia spoke with raw honesty about the trust that led them into danger, about the fear, the hunger, the despair, about Jesse's strength, his love, his final words. The footage from the recovered camera was used sparingly, respectfully. Public response was overwhelming. People didn't see her as a victim. They saw her as a beacon. Letters poured in. Survivors of trauma, abuse, isolation, families of missing persons, people who had given up hope and found it again through her words. Inspired by that outpouring, Mia went a step further. She wrote a book, One Last Photo. It was more than a memoir. It was a tribute, a love letter, a roadmap of survival. And in its final chapter, she included the last picture Jesse ever took of her. The haunting one, the one that started it all. But beside it, she placed a second image. A photo Amber had taken the week Mia was released from the hospital. Mia is standing in a sunlit field, barefoot, smiling softly. Alive. Free. Side by side, the photos told a story. One of horror, and one of healing. The tunnel had taken a part of her, but it hadn't taken everything. She had come out the other side, and now, she would light the way for others.